Hi, this is Phillip at Château Avensac, and last year, I think it was in the summer, I did a tour of the terrace and the park, and it was before we had a bunch of work done in the park on the trees. We had a lot of old trees that never been trimmed or hadn't been trimmed in a very long time, and also there are many saplings that have become quite big trees that were crowding in some of the other trees. And so in the fall, we had a tree surgeon come in, and he and his crew spent, I think, 2 weeks doing a whole bunch of work in the park. And now it's a beautiful spring day, so I think it's time to take a look and see how things have changed. Okay, I am starting this tour of our park at the very bottom of the park. And you can see just in the distance there, the bottom of the grand staircase that comes down from the mid-terrace right in front of us. And you can see here we are in the park with the green fields, and then to the right you see the beginnings here to the right of the little forest. Our forest is very little, but it's cute and it's very, very pleasant. Here I'm walking basically along the road on the property. And you'll notice that all that work that was done on the trees, this has just completely opened up the park. It's opened up the views of the chateau and from the chateau as well. So it's really, really been lovely. Right in the middle in front of me, there was a huge pine tree that was dead. Its limbs had been cut off, but the whole trunk, like 20 or 30 feet were left. And that was all taken out. So this is completely opened up the space down here. I'm gonna pause here as you can really now see the view of the chateau and the linden trees on the mid-terrace. It's really quite beautiful. You might notice that the doors in the bottom left are open to the back terrace. That's actually our bedroom. It's just a beautiful day. A little breeze in the air. It's quite lovely. And this is really where some of the big changes happened in the park in the fall. There were many, many saplings here crowding in some of these trees, and that was the problem. It's been many, many years since any large work was done on the trees in the park. So all those saplings were removed. Some of the trees that were just crowding in were taken out. There were a few sick trees that were taken out. And then the trees that remain were just sort of limbed up a little bit or just trimmed a little bit just to kind of help their shape and their growth so that they can continue thriving for a long time. And you'll see at the base of many of the trees, like right here, the limbs were cut up for us and left here. I need to get down here in the next month or so. I really need to get them cleared out. I think we're gonna just bring the truck down into the park and just start loading up with wood and then get them stacked up properly so they can properly season. They really shouldn't be left just sitting at the base of the trees. And the longer I wait, the harder it'll be to do the work. So I think in the next couple of weeks, it's gonna be one of our projects going on here at the chateau. Here we're looking at the supporting walls of the terrace. These walls were the original defensive walls of the 14th century chateau. And there is the terraces, partly because of course we're on the end of a ridge, but also because the outer wall was the defensive wall, and the inner wall, the wall that creates the upper terrace now, that actually was the wall of the chateau, of the 14th century chateau. It just raised up out of the ground on top of that wall. You have to imagine a real medieval chateau here, not the sort of more elegant 18th, 19th century design that we have now, but something really built for fortification and showed strength. Something that the villagers could come to if there was a danger of someone invading in the area. That 14th century chateau was built by the son of the Lord of Phillip. And Phillip is about 2.5 kilometers across the valley from us on the other side. So between Photos and here in Avensac, the same family controlled both sides of the valley. It allowed them to keep an eye on what's going on and to defend the valley. Now the high location, the ridge, just creates a lovely place with lovely views, which is what inspired the current chateau of the 19th century. It was built in the 19th century, but a lot of its designs were done in the mid to late 18th century. So it kind of shows features of both 18th and 19th century design. It will probably be a long time before we do this kind of work in the park and on these trees. Here's the bottom of the grand staircase. This staircase is on the maps from the ancient chateau. So this staircase does date back to the 14th century. It might have been added later. I don't know that it was actually original, but it is a pretty ancient stone staircase. And at one point, there was a lane that went down through the middle of the park. And on either side of it were various gardens. There was an orchard, there were some pleasure gardens, and there were just sort of different sections that went down on either side of the lane. You have to picture the lane basically coming down right where I'm standing and going straight. Now you might see to the right, at the end, you see our bottom gate. And that's where I started when I was walking. I was down at the bottom gate, but the road didn't go to that gate. It actually went right pretty much, right to about where we are in the middle of the frame. So it went straight down through the park. And then it was either side, there were these separate areas of gardens and open space. And along what is now the main road coming into the village, I say main road, it's not a very big road. But between us and the farm we're looking at, which is across the street, that's the road, that's the edge of the property. Right around along that edge, there was some kind of a basin for water, which probably supplied water to the park and the trees in the park and the gardens that were here. And here again, we can see we're at the base of the grand stairs that come down. I'm now gonna walk just along the edge of the forest. So to the left of the park is our petit forêt, the little forest. For most of it, it's fairly thick with brush, so it's not really navigable. But this little section, as we get a little further along, is really quite delightful. And there's just these little winding, kind of like winding paths or winding lanes between little clumps of trees and brush. And it's often dappled with shade and sun, like the sun filtering through the trees. So it's really just really delightful. I can imagine maybe back in the day, there was some part of this that was there that when it was just too hot, you could have the servants bring you your lunch table and chairs and, well, of course, tons of champagne and cheese and fruit from your own orchards, and just relax through the heat of the afternoon. And hence, right now as we entered, this is that section I'm talking about, where it's all just dappled shade. And like right now I'm in the sun and it's a bit on the warm side, and as I just crossed the threshold, it's like I've entered another world. And it's just a little bit cooler and feels delightful and refreshing. I use delightful a lot, but it's really the right word. And you can see in front of me, they're just little clumps of bushes with trees and then paths around them. I am coming now to really the very bottom corner of the property. In fact, we have this kind of little dip in our path. It goes down and then up. And as I come up, you'll see that right to the side here is a lane. This is a lane, it just goes to the house that's down in the field next to us. I say next to us, it's still quite a ways. And that really marks the end of our property along the lane. And if I come out quite breezy now here. I don't know if it'll be too noisy from the wind. We can see the edge of the field. Our property is basically running along the forest line. It's somewhere, the property line is somewhere in here at the edge of the forest. And it goes all the way to what we see on the other end of this field. Sort of where our part of the forest ends, the little forest. All right, let's get back in. The safety of the forest. This path to the right, that's the path I just came down, so I'm going to take the middle little path. And this is what I mean, these little clumps of the brush. And this brush is made up of myrtle. I believe it's a kind of myrtle. Maybe it's a kind of laurel. Oh, there's going to be some corrections on that. And we'll find out what this is. And it forms this very thick brush. It's really great for decorations in the holidays because it has a holly-like look to it, like a little holly-like look. And there is plenty of it. You can also imagine small secret affairs happening nestled in these trees. Quite the risque little place on the property. One day we'll have some afternoon event, maybe some small event. We'll set up some tables in here in the summer, you know, when it's hot. We can just sit out here and just relax, enjoy the sound of the birds, have cheese and wine. Be lovely. All right, I'm now just popping out. I'm towards the bottom of the park. I'm not quite all the way at the bottom. Coming out on the side. I want to point out this large tree. It's the cedar of Lebanon. It was debatable whether this tree would be able to be saved. It was in not very good condition, and had been limbed up quite a bit over the years. So there's only really the canopy of it left. It's just, and it had a lot of brush around it. So that was all cleared out. You can see, as I get closer to it, that the brush is trying to grow back. So we're gonna have to do some weed whacking, or strimming, as the English folk like to say, and just try and keep that down a little bit. By removing all that brush it was completely surrounding the bottom of it, it just completely opened up the tree. He's not the prettiest cedar of Lebanon of his years of being limbed up, but he's still here, still holding strong, and should be able to stay here for a long time now that it's got a little bit of space to grow and thrive. I'm going to continue through the park and then mount those stairs and climb them. And I may be a little breathless when I get to the top. Normally this would be the time that Ruby might show up and I could take a pause and just sit on the steps and play with her. But she has her own schedule about when she does things, and it's quite the mystery. I'm at the point where you come down and the staircase splits to the left and right. But from this point, we really get a nice vantage of the whole open part of the park. And you can see the buttresses of the outer defense walls of the old chateau. I mentioned before that these walls, the ones I'm just passing up over now, were the defensive walls, and the wall directly in front of me that supports the upper terrace really was the side wall of the old chateau. The buildings were sitting right on top of it. And here you get a really lovely approach to the chateau. These stairs in front of us are at a very strange, rakish angle, but when you stand just right, it kind of lines them up perfectly centered with the chateau, and they almost look straight. They almost look straight. Nothing looks straight around here, that's for sure. Time is taking its toll. These trees on either side of me are linden trees, teal trees in French. And in American English, we actually refer to them as lime trees. Not lime as in citrus, but they're also called lime trees. They produce a flower. In fact, nope, I was wondering if I saw something, but I don't. That can be used to make a tea. You can dry it and make tea from it. It's supposed to be quite lovely. In fact, I recently bought some in the supermarket because I actually never had it and I thought I'd like to try it. These trees get paillarded, so they get cut down all the way to their sort of main branches, and then they just poof back up like lollipops. And just once the spring hits, they just suddenly go so fast. You can see basically this is the side of the tower gate. And it was just by the gates into the upper gate into the park. That's where I started my intro. So you can see we've come around full circle. I want to point out this tree that we're looking at the base of. Let's go up to its canopy. This is a Judas tree. The tree surgeon was very concerned about it. It's not in great shape, but it's doing much better now. He wasn't sure if it could be saved, but he was insistent on trying. And so he's trimmed it up to try and hopefully let it give it space to grow. This tree, he said, is at least 500 years old and possibly older. He said it could be older. So it's not impossible that this tree was planted when the 14th century chateau was built, or just shortly thereafter, within 100 or 200 years. That's really kind of amazing. And here it is still today. It's a Judas tree, and it produces this beautiful kind of purplish, reddish purplish flower when it flowers in the early spring. It's finished for now, but it really is kind of spectacular. I hope you enjoyed the spring tour of the park and a little of the mid-terrace and moat. Thank you very much to our patrons whose contributions go directly towards the renovation of the chateau, and to all of our viewers whose continued support help continue the projects and the works that we're doing here in this renovation and restoration. I can't tell you how appreciated it is. Thank you.